Now, following that conversation with Kirsty, I wanted to talk to someone at a contracting business as opposed to a utility. So with this in mind, I spoke to Mitchell Sayce, the SHEQ Manager at Enpure. Now, Enpure operate all around the world delivering water and wastewater projects, and Mitchell has a long and rich background in contracting. So his perspective on what are the key risks and how can they best be mitigated was particularly relevant. Mitch, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Pleasure to be here, Piers. Thank you.
Now, we're talking to you because we've just heard from Kirsty at Scottish Water about some of the challenges they have in a utility. And you work in a contracting business, and contracting businesses have very different health and safety challenges to utilities. So let's start by telling me a little bit about Enpure, the business you work for.
Yeah, so Enpure are a multidisciplined water and wastewater engineering specialist. We deliver projects throughout the world, whether it be large-scale wastewater projects down to small little kiosks. We sort of cover everything, and we're an in-house design and build contractor. So by that I mean we, from cradle to grave, from concept to commissioning, that's our bag.
You've got engineers sitting in a design office, and you've got site operators out on site pouring concrete and things like that.
Exactly that.
Now, your role as SHEQ Manager, what are the things that keep you awake at night? What are the things that you're having to wrestle with that might be those of water utilities themselves?
It's an interesting point you make, and I think the industry is very diverse for those of us that are in it. There's a lot of operational risk, your typical lifting, temporary works, control of mechanical and electrical systems. But it comes back to me personally, I sort of like to focus on the design element and where we can engineer risk away. I don't think the industry does enough on that. I think the clients, the water companies themselves, have quite a lot of hold on this, if you like, because the pre-construction information we get is often very sketchy or, shall we say, scarce. So we're not afforded, a full risk profile of which to sort of take forward into our design, into our control, and then to really appreciate the risk that is there to our people.
So let me just make sure we've captured that point. So what you're saying is that there is the opportunity to design out a lot of the risk, but your ability to do that in the most effective way is hampered because you're sometimes not provided with all the necessary information that you would like to have to be able to do that. So why don't you get that information?
Sometimes it's because things have been lost over the years. Record keeping wasn't necessarily prioritised in years gone by as it is now. And also, I think, there's that many different people involved in a project this day and age, the people, move on, move around. And I think that sort of definitely contributes to, a lack of information passage or lack of understanding between the teams. And as I said, sort of at the outset, really, my real sort of how can the industry improve is to focus on design. We talk about designing for safety, and I'm sure most of the water companies have got their own various forums with their partners, but I still don't think we see enough output of that to say, right, how can we design out this risk? How can we engineer out this risk? And I think it's a fine balance because obviously, there's a capital expenditure that the water companies have to manage. But if we're talking about a reduced risk for the operators during the construction, surely that's got to carry some weight and got to be considered in the design phase.
Got it. All right. What advice would you give? I captured the point about early design. What's the best practice bit that you've seen inside Enpure that you could share with other contractors or other people working in the water sector?
I think for me, the biggest thing is educating your teams to the point where if they're not sure, they will stop. We don't just proceed, gung-ho with a design, or we say, right, that's ready to go to site now. It's what we call approved for construction. Until we're satisfied, we don't progress through that gate. We have a hard control gate that says, right, are we happy with everything? Have we reduced the risk as far as reasonably practicable? And if we don't have all the information to pass that gate, we don't.
No, and that's
yes.
That's interesting because that's a cultural thing. That's a cultural and leadership thing. It's empowering people to be able to say, I'm not safe. We are stopping this. And that's whether they're a graduate on site or a 50 years experience person?
Yeah, I mean, we've developed or resurrected, I should say, the no accident behaviour culture program within the business, and it's really been used to drive that behavioural change, that sort of outside the box thinking, but also given the people, given our people the empowerment to say, right, we're not happy with this, we're stopping until we got the right justification, clarification, and we can proceed safely.
Wonderful. Mitch, thank you for taking the time to join us today. I wish you the very best.
It's been a pleasure, Piers. Thank you very much.
So some really interesting points there for us to take away, in particular around the provision of data early to enable contractors to design out risk before any site work even begins. Thanks again for sharing, Mitch.